Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Speaker of the day, Bhavnaben Doshi, Vice President Narayan Pasari, Joint Secretary Sunil Gabawala, seniors, professionals, and student friends. Welcome everyone to this lecture meeting on GST, Place of Supply Rules. BCA arranges these free lecture meetings twice a month in addition to the other professional educational activities on an ongoing basis. Considering the importance of this new legislation, GST, BCS has already conducted lecture meetings, seminars, and workshops. And continuing with this process of member education, this lecture meeting on the very important topic of place of supply rules has been planned. Our PM, Mr. Narendra Modi, remarked, GST means great step by Team India. It means great step towards transformation. It means great step towards transparency, which is why we are bringing in GST. Friends, GST is intended to create one single unified market by subsuming most of the indirect taxes currently levied by both center and state, resulting in a fragmented Indian economy. It will facilitate seamless transfer of goods and services across the supply chain in one of the largest markets in the world. The GST scheme is proposed to be a destination-based consumption tax, which simply put is a tax at the point of consumption. But the moot question is whether the introduction of GST will have an adverse impact on small and medium enterprises. Our chairman, Govindbhai Goyal, has been advocating this very, I would say, very hard on this, in fact, that so far there has been, the small and medium enterprises has been so far enjoying the basic exemption limit under excise duty of 1.5 crores. And that's the reason why they have been able to compete with the MNCs. But now with this GST, everyone is on the same level, in the same level playing field in the open market. Now the question is whether these small and medium enterprises will be able to compete with these MNCs. Another aspect that we all need to understand is whether our clients are GST ready. With the frantic pace at which the government is moving, there are all the possibilities of GST being implemented from 1st April 2017. As CAs, what steps are we taking in this regard? Are we informing our clients or assisting them in conducting the impact analysis on their pricing structure, the branch-to-branch transfers, the updating of their IT platforms? Believe me, if our clients are not GST ready, then come 1st April, they will not be able to raise a single invoice, and their business may come to a standstill. So it is on us to first educate ourselves and then educate our clients. Coming to the topic, the determination of place of supply is exceedingly vital to both the taxpayer as well as the government. There are separate rules for determination of place of supply for goods and services. Basically, the concept of place of supply is not new to those who were in the service tax practice, but for others, it is completely a foreign concept. Service tax, being a central levy, did not have concern over SENVAT as it was not bound by state territorial jurisdiction. However, the same is significant in the GST regime, since the levy now comprises of state shares as well, the SGST. In fact, like many central and state laws are subsumed in GST, the traditional concept of manufacture, sale, and provision of service will be subsumed in a very important definition of supply, which is believed to be the heart of GST. And to understand the nuances of the place of supply rules, we have none other than Bhavnaben, who speaks from her heart, and each word spoken gets registered with the audience. Ms. Bhavnaben Doshi serves as a senior advisor of KPMG. She provides advisory services in the field of taxation, accounting, corporate, and regulatory matters. She served as a president of the Indian Merchant Chambers. She has a rich experience of over 3 decades as partner in renowned firms of chartered accountants. She has been advising on national and international companies at varied matters relating to taxation, restructuring, valuation of shares, business, family partitions, and so on. She also represented various entities in tax matters and successfully argued cases before the appellate tribunals. She has been on the board of various, I would say, various listed companies, and she has been a non-executive and independent director on sorry, I missed out because a lot of things she has written. She served as a director. Yeah, no. Let me inform you this part. She was the president of the Indian Merchant Chambers Ladies Wing. She's an elected member of the Council of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and serves at its various committees, including the Accounting Standards Board. We are grateful to her as she has always been generous with her time for BCS, and I will request Narayan to present a memento to her as a mark of appreciation and regard. Please join me in welcoming Bhavana Ben. Bhavana Ben, please.
Thank you, Chetan, Sunil, Narayan, and all of you, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today, talking about a subject which is very dear to me and very dear to many of you who are here, a subject which is a little difficult in a sense for anyone to really understand, apply, implement, and also very, very complex. Because some of the things which we as a country are doing are very unique. It's nowhere in the world. And this whole concept which we have developed of IGST mechanism by which there can be an entire chain, tax passes through the entire chain without break, and yet the concerns of the tax administrators are taken into consideration is something which is very unique. And therefore, whenever you have something like this, there are bound to be challenges, bound to be complexities. And it's really a pleasure today to discuss some of these issues, understand the challenges, and some of you have had opportunity of implementing it or, in a sense, trying to apply it in client situations, which will give us an idea also of the typical challenges that would come up. So what I'm proposing to do is, next 50 to 60 minutes, I will take you through the provisions. We'll also discuss one or two simple case studies, and thereafter, when you have questions, we will discuss them. In case there are not many issues which are coming up, then we will raise the issues ourselves. Sunil is here. So with that, let me start off on my subject. Again hung up. Hung up again. Luckily, it's working now. So whenever we talk about the transactions, just to give you a little background before and recap for many of you who've already understood and are working on it, in a business, they would have the international transactions and the domestic transactions. So far as international... So you have the transactions which are either import or export. And when we come to domestic, the new design that we have developed is what I spoke to you about, IGST. So we have the intrastate transactions and interstate transactions. We are used to this intrastate and interstate transaction. Only thing is the way we determine what is an intrastate and interstate transaction is undergoing a change. Now, so far as international transactions are concerned, we have the exports and we have the imports. Now, these terms are defined in the model GST law. When we talk about import, it's very clearly specified that it means bringing of goods into India, and there are separate rules for goods and services. So what is being brought into India is import, and what is going out of the country, out of India, is export. And we'll just deal with the reason why it's made so simple. And for the services, there are separate rules which we will deal with. So just to give you a very simple example, that if there is a supplier and he from overseas and he is supplying goods to an Indian customer, so the Indian is an importer, at the time of import now, the imports will be regarded as if they are an interstate transaction. And on import, at the time when one pays customs duty, in addition to the customs duty, one would pay the IGST. So now the additional duty, which was equivalent to excise duty and also the sales tax, CST, will go away, and that will be replaced by IGST. IGST is a combination of the central GST and the state GST, CGST and SGST. More or less, it would be at that level, though since the rates are not yet firmed up, there may be some difference, but broadly, that's the way it will be worked out. Now, on the other hand, when so far as services are concerned, there will be reverse charge mechanism on import. When we talk about exports, so far as exports are concerned, whether the export is to a business or a non-business, you will have zero rating. Therefore, all the exports will again be regarded as if they are an IGST transaction, and there will be zero rating, meaning the rate applied is zero, and all the taxes which are paid on inputs, so whatever is the input tax credit available with that exporter will be refunded to the exporter. So effectively, the export will be made fully tax-free, and on the other hand, imports will be taxed. Now, this is the international model. All the countries which have implemented VAT and GST adopt this model. Now, when we come to the domestic transactions, the model that we have is, and again, this is partly similar to earlier model, partly different. When we have transactions where the goods are going from one state to another, whether they are going to a business or a non-business, current situation, we are paying CST. There is a central sales tax, and you have concessional rate if it's going to a business, and you have full rate if it is going to a non-business. In the new scenario, it will be IGST. So irrespective of whether it is going to a business or non-business, it will be IGST. Now, when it is within the state, so from a person who has received in our example, state B, when he is supplying goods or services within the state, it will be local, intrastate. And for intrastate supplies, there will be CGST plus SGST. Now, when IGST is a total of C plus S, and on the other hand, C plus S will be applied, some people do ask question that then what is the difference? Here you have IGST and there you have C plus S. So what is the difference? Because I is a total of C plus S. The difference is in the input tax credit availability. Because S is state specific, whereas IGST is agnostic. You can set it off against any tax that you have to pay, whether you have to pay CGST or SGST. So that's the key difference. Now, we will have two parallel streams. One is the central GST and the state GST. Both will run parallelly. They'll not meet each other. But when it comes to a transaction which is between the states, it will be IGST. And IGST is really a settlement mechanism. It's a mechanism through which the taxes which are paid in one state will be transferred to another state. And that is why we have this IGST model, the model by which taxes paid in one state are transferred to another state. So there is no cascading effect of taxes, and the businesses get credit for the taxes that they pay. Now, we will have separate legislations. So center will have its own legislation, which will be CGST plus IGST, and the states will have their own legislation. So each of the state will have its own legislation. At the moment, the way the drafts are coming and the way the groups are working, they are looking at having a standard, the same format, the same provisions for both the laws, so C and S. So if you find some particular provision in central GST, the same provision you will find in the state GST, except that C will be replaced by S. And it will be same across the country. So whether you take Maharashtra SGST law or you take Gujarat SGST law, it will be same. Ideally same. There may be minor differences. At the moment, the work is on the basis that they will be identical. Now, when we come to domestic transactions, what we need to do is determine whether a transaction is interstate transaction or an intrastate transaction. As we all know, if it is in the same state, if both are in the same state, and I'm using the term little loosely, is if the origin and the destination are in the same state, it's a local intrastate transaction. If they are in different states, it's an interstate transaction. Now here, the origin is the location of the supplier, and what we understand as destination is the place of supply. So that is the difference when we look at the GST law. So we have two aspects. One is what is the location of supplier? That is the place from which the supply is originating. That's the location of supplier. So from where the supplier comes. The second is at which place. That's a destination. At which place is the supply made, and that at which place is to be determined by the place of supply rules. The provisions, there is no separate rule like earlier we used to have. There are separate provisions under the IGST law. And that's the topic for our discussion today as to what does it provide and how do we interpret and apply. So just one to start with, where do we use this place of supply rules? The place of supply rules are to be used only for determining whether a transaction is interstate or intrastate. No other place we are going to use this place of supply rules. So they are not going to determine which state do you register and what is the location of the recipient, what is the location of provider, where, and so on and so forth. Because then linked to that is which tax you will pay. The which tax you will pay will be determined by whether a transaction is intrastate or interstate. In which state you will pay is again based on whether a transaction is interstate or intrastate. So key aspect that one needs to bear in mind is these rules help us only to determine whether a transaction is interstate or intrastate. The origin and destination are in the same state or are in different states. When we look at this place of supply provisions, the key aspects which we need to understand is supply. Because first of all, there has to be a supply for these provisions to apply. Then there are provisions, as Chetan mentioned, separate provisions to determine the supply of goods, where is it taking place, at which place, where, and separate rules for services. So we need to understand what is goods and what is service under the GST law, and that has undergone a significant change from our current law. We will also need to understand what is the location of supplier of service and what is the location of recipient of service. And all these terms are defined in the GST law. So let us start with supply. Supply is defined in an inclusive manner. When we look at the meaning which is given in the GST law, supply is all forms of supply. So whether it is a sale, whether it's a barter, whether it's a lease, variety of activities that could happen will be regarded as supply so long as it is for consideration and it is in furtherance of business. So in the course of and for the purpose of business. So we have three aspects. Any activity which could be what it could result in. It could be regarded as a barter transaction or it could be a lease transaction, variety of activities which could happen so long as it is for consideration and in the course of and for the purpose of business, it constitutes supply. When we come to imports, the definition today states that for imports, there need not be any consideration. There need not be any consideration. Even if it is without consideration, it would be regarded as supply. What we are expecting is that separate provisions will come because all imports of services cannot be subjected to tax, it would not be workable, not possible, not feasible. But at the moment, those provisions are not available. So what we have is that even if there is some import of service and if it is without consideration, it would still constitute supply. Job work has been very separately dealt with. So far as job work is concerned, it's not strictly a supply. It is strictly not a supply. Similarly, it's also not without consideration. And I'll just come to that in a second, because there are certain activities which are regarded as supply, though they may be without consideration, which is in Schedule 1. So for job work, an exception has been made. And then any transaction between principal and agent is also a supply. So that's another aspect which we need to bear in mind, because today there are agents and the transactions between them are not regarded as sales, because they are not sales. The transfer of property does not take place. These are the supplies which are to be regarded as without consideration. Several representations have been made on this, so this may undergo some change. As of now, what we have are these 5 categories, really 4 categories, and job work is the 5th category. The 4 categories where even if there is no consideration, because earlier we saw the definition of supply would mean for consideration. This is an exception. In these 4 categories, even if there is no consideration, it would be regarded as supply. The important one to note is the last one, taxable, from one taxable person to another taxable or non-taxable person. So this covers really branch transfers, and it is causing a lot of problems for services sector. Now, place of supply of goods. As we said, there are separate rules. So let us understand what are the place of supply rules for goods. We must first understand what is the meaning of goods. Now, goods for us now is very clear. It's something which is physical, something which we can feel and touch. That's goods. And that is why when we dealt with import and export, it is simply something which is going out of the country and something which is coming in. And because goods are something which we can feel, we can touch, it's very easy to say something which has come inside the country and something which has gone outside of the country. So a lot of problems which currently we are facing of whether it's goods or service will vanish once GST comes in. The important point to note is that the definition of goods includes securities. Then we come to the place of supply. When we look at place of supply, we have several situations. And if you read these provisions very carefully, you'll understand that the people who have drafted this have really applied their mind to the typical problems which are currently being faced, because they also face these situations when people represent to them. So if you see, if it involves movement of goods, that means if the goods are moving from one place to another, the place where the goods are delivered is the place of supply. And we'll take some examples to explain this. Now today we have a situation where there is in-transit sale, right? And we used to have the forms to prove that this is an in-transit sale. Now that is also taken care of. We had difficulty about bill to ship to. That is also addressed. That issue is also addressed so that we don't have the problems. And the credit, the tax does not stick anywhere. The credit of taxes moves. Now, then there is a concept which is applicable here when there is a transfer of title by documents, so in transit sale, that in that case, there will be a deemed supply to the person on whose account and at whose instructions the goods are delivered to another person. Now here, because physically the goods are not moving to that person, the place of business, the principal place of business for that person is the place where it is to be regarded as he having received the supply of goods. And that is where, what is that principal place of business? That is also defined. It's the place which is in the certificate of registration, which will be issued by the department, or where the taxable person keeps his books of accounts, maintains his records, because that is where it will be verifiable. So let's take a very simple example to understand this. There is a supplier in Maharashtra. Now he is invoicing to a customer in Delhi. So customer in Delhi has placed the order on this supplier in Maharashtra, and he says, you bill me, but you ship to another person in MP. So bill to one, ship to another person. That's the situation. Now in this case, when there is bill to customer, there will be two transactions. One between Maharashtra and Delhi, and second between Delhi and MP. The first one will be IGST because they are in two different states. The second, Delhi to MP, again IGST because they are in different states. So that an IGST, as you know, is a tax which is only a settlement mechanism, and it can be used to pay any taxes. So effectively, the tax will move to the place where the goods are delivered, because that is the person who will then subsequently make sale. So he must get input tax credit of the taxes paid. So through that customer in Delhi, the tax will move to MP. Take another situation. Now this is where the same customer in Delhi says, please deliver the goods to Maharashtra. Deliver the goods to Maharashtra. So the goods physically are moving to a person in Maharashtra, but at the instructions of a person who is located in Delhi. So in this case again, there will be two IGST transactions. One between Maharashtra and Delhi, and second between Delhi and Maharashtra again. Similar will be the situation when goods are moving to one person, but while the goods are moving, there is a transfer. So the title to the goods is transferred, and that Delhi person says that please deliver it to MP. Same situation will apply. Now, the next question is, will it make any difference if MP is a factory of the Delhi customer? Will it make any difference if in MP, where the delivery is being made, is the factory of the customer? Answer is again no, because it will be Maharashtra to Delhi and Delhi to MP, because by transfer, what we saw, what is deemed to be a supply without consideration is when a taxable person transfers goods to another taxable or non-taxable person. That is also a supply. That supply is between two different states, and therefore it will be an IGST transaction. Then there are other situations. If there is no movement of goods, then the location. So if the goods are where they are, but a transaction has taken place where the title to the goods has changed from A to B, the ownership has changed, in that case, it's a location at the time of delivery. There could be a situation where the goods are assembled at site, installed at site, and this is what happens in infra projects. So in that case, the location of site is the place of supply. If they are supplied on board a conveyance, again, this is a consumption-based tax. So when, say, the goods are loaded on the aircraft, it's a place where they are delivered for loading on the aircraft. Or it could be an aeroplane or, train or a vessel. So location at the time they are taken on board, and there could be situations which they understand could arise, and therefore the authority is given to GST Council to address the issue of place of supply. So if there are situations which are not addressed by the rules, that will be through the GST Council. Now we come to place of supply of services. Now, first of all, again, just as goods, we need to understand what is service. Service is defined as anything other than goods. That's how it is defined in the Constitution. That's how it is defined in the model law. And we are very clearly told that it will include intangible property. So now intangible property will be regarded as service. We don't have to worry about it being regarded as goods. It will also include actionable claims. Now, this is something which is bothering several people, particularly the financial services sector, because actionable claim will now be regarded as service, and therefore the whole industry where they have securitization and assignments and all could have a problem because it would attract then the tax. So that is being represented. It does not include money. Then we have a schedule, Schedule 2, which states that what activities will be deemed to be goods and what will be deemed to be services. This is what happens elsewhere in the other parts of the world, where they say that certain activities we will regard as activities relating to goods and certain activities as services. The distinction is very critical because the place of supply rules are different, and that is why it's essential that we have this distinction. So if there is a transaction where the title to the goods is transferred, it will be regarded as goods, whether the title is transferred now or at a future date. So say you have a hire purchase transaction where the title will be transferred at a future date, but the title will be transferred, so it will be regarded as a transaction of goods. Then several other transactions. So if you have the transfer of right to use the goods, so whatever we had as deemed sales, whether it's a works contract, whether it's leasing activity, whether it's restaurant services, earlier we had this issue where it was regarded as deemed sale. So we had partly sale and partly service. Partly it was the sale of goods and partly it was amounting to supply, provision of service, and that's where we had several challenges. So now we are told that all of this will now be service. So works contract, and this is what several people are asking, that how can works contract, which involves supply of goods as well as services, be regarded as service? But that is how it is. It will be regarded as service. Leasing, again, service. Restaurant services, again, though you will supply food, etc., which are actually physical goods, it will be regarded as service. And then whatever were declared services under the service tax law will continue to be regarded as service. So those are also enumerated. And GST Council will have to look at this, and if there are any challenges, they will make suggestions, recommendations, on the basis of which amendment to this aspect will be made. So if there are challenges which are found, or there are new situations which are found where a question is arising whether it is goods or service, then the GST Council will address it. Now we come to the place of supply provisions. Now, when we look at place of supply of services, we have a fundamental general rule that the general rule is, it's a location of the registered person, the person who's receiving. So if it is a B2B transaction, it is the place where the registered person, is located. Then we have supplies of services to non-registered persons, people who are not registered. In that case, it is the location of the recipient of the service, if address of that person is available. So if the address of that person is available with a supplier, then it's location of the recipient. And as a last resort, in case nothing is available, then the place of supply will be where the provider of the service is located. So we tried to look at situations where location of service provider will come. Hardly any situation which will come in this, because by and large, in today's day, you will have either the registered person or the address of that registered person available with you. Because several transactions you will ask for the address of the person you are dealing with. Now, to this general rule, obviously this general rule cannot address every situation, and there has to be exceptions. This was even current position, even under our current service tax law, it is the recipient location or the recipient of service where the supply is regarded as being made. Now we have exceptions, and these exceptions are 12 in number. And they've been developed after a lot of deliberations, looking at several situations where there could be challenges, because the fundamental principle which is borne in mind while drafting these provisions is that the tax is destination-based tax. That means it must reach the destination, one. Secondly, so far as businesses are concerned, it should be passed through. They should not be stuck with the tax. They should be able to pass on these taxes. Now, there are situations, and when you do practical situations, take up practical situations and try to apply, you may find that there are some situations where the tax is not moving and the tax is sticking to the businesses. But by and large, this is the fundamental principle. So whenever we also apply or try to interpret, we need to bear these principles in mind. Now let us look at, therefore, what is the location of supplier of service and what is the location of recipient of service, because these are two terms which are very critical for us to apply these provisions. So when we look at the supplier of service, what is important is from where is he supplying, because this is the origination of a transaction. So the place from where he is supplying is critical, is important. And from where he is supplying the service, the default rule is that wherever he has obtained registration, that is the place from where he is supplying the service. Now, if you look at the registration provisions, you'll find that if on an all-India basis, so on an aggregate turnover basis, taking the turnover across the country, if it exceeds now 20 lakhs, earlier it was 10 lakhs, it exceeds 20 lakhs, you need to obtain registration. What could happen is, in some places or some states, your turnover is not even 2 lakhs. But still, you will be required to register at that place if from that place some supply of goods or service is being made. Because the moment you cross on an all-India basis 20 lakhs, you have an obligation to register yourself. Now, if the supply is not being made from the place for which you have obtained registration, and again here, we tried to look at several situations where a person will not supply from a place which is registered, because the moment his turnover crosses 20 lakhs, by and large, he will have to obtain registration for all the places from where he is doing business. So he would, by and large, have registration. But in case he doesn't have that registration from where he is supplying the service, then the fixed establishment. Now, what is the fixed establishment? The fixed establishment is a place other than the place of business. So other than the place of business, but which has some sort of permanency to it. There are people, there is technology such that a person can provide service or receive service, so supply service or receive service at that location. That is the fixed establishment. And then we have a tiebreaker, that if the service is being provided from more than one place, so from the place which is registered and a fixed establishment which is not a place of business, then you have a tiebreaker, the place which is most directly concerned with that supply of service. And if there is nothing available, you can't find answer to any of this, then you have to go by the residence of supplier. Residence of supplier, though the term used is residence, it also applies to non-individuals. So for individuals, where a person usually resides, for non-individuals, so say companies or partnership firms and others, where they are incorporated or legally constituted, that is regarded as the residence. Exactly converse is that of the recipient. So the location of the recipient, now here the relevance is the place where he receives the service. In the earlier was from where the supplier provides service. Here is where he receives the service. So if he receives at the registered place, registered business, then that is the place of the recipient. If he receives anywhere else, exactly same as applied in the earlier situation, fixed place of business, the tiebreaker, and if nothing available, the usual place of residence. Now the recipient, the term recipient is also defined. This was a problem we were facing under the service tax law, that who is the recipient that we should look at. And generally the argument always was that the person who's making the payment should be regarded as recipient. Now that is really here included in the law itself. What we are told is that if some consideration is payable, in that case, the person who is liable to make that payment is the person who is the recipient of service. So we don't have to worry about different situations. And say, take for example, say McKinsey. Now McKinsey has a Bombay office and say they have a Delhi office. And they have contracted with a service provider to provide some services. Now if the contract is with Mumbai office, and if the payment is going to be made by Mumbai office, the recipient of service will be Mumbai office. That is how it will work. The person who is liable to make the payment. Now, in case the consideration is not payable, then it is divided between goods and services. Different rules are applicable. If consideration is not payable, and if it is goods, then the person to whom the goods are made available is the recipient. And in case it is service, then it is the person to whom the service is rendered. That's a recipient. And if on behalf of the principal, an agent receives service, then that agent will also be regarded as the person who's received the services. Now we come to the specific rules. As I said, there are 12 situations where we have specific rules which are not covered by the general rule. The first is in relation to immovable property. Now, so far as immovable property is concerned, even today we have the location of immovable property. The same rule applies. So the location of immovable property and any service which is in relation to immovable property, so whether it is letting out of that property, transfer of certain rights in relation to that property, or services of architects, or services of estate agents, anything which is relating to that immovable property will be where the property is located. It also includes lodging services or even houseboats. Those are all regarded as immovable. Then we have another category which is in relation to restaurant catering services, the beauty services, health services. Now these are all performance based. So where performed is the location of the supply, place of supply of service. Then so far as events are concerned, whether it's cultural event or artistic event or an educational program or entry to an amusement park, there are two parts to this. One is admission for that event, admission to the amusement park or event, and organization of the event. So to the extent admission is concerned, it is the place of event where the event is taking place, and we'll take some examples, or the location of the amusement wherever it is located. I'll come to organization a little later because there the rule is different. Then so far as telecom is concerned, again a very big challenge which all of us, when we are talking generally, we ask this question, that I am traveling from Mumbai to say Ahmedabad, and on the way I have online transaction, internet transaction, I charge, recharge, whatever. So there were lots of challenges, and it is divided into 4 categories. One is, if you have a postpaid mobile connection, in that case, the billing, your billing address will be the place where the service is provided. If it is prepaid, Prepaid means you'll go somewhere and take either the voucher or you'll make the payment. So where the payment is received or voucher is sold. Now, if you are doing online transaction while you are traveling from one place to another, and this is always talked about in the train or anywhere you do that, so it's address on record, because you can't decide which is the place. So whatever is the address available with that service provider on its record, that's the address which will be applicable to determine the place of supply. And if it is a fixed line or a DTH, in that case, the place where it is installed, so where your antenna is installed and or the line is given to you, these are the places where it will be regarded as the place of supply. Banking and financial services, and we'll take an example a little later. This is another challenge. At the moment, the rule is that if that service is linked to an account of the service recipient, then the location of recipient as per the records of the supplier, if it is linked to an account. But if it is not linked to an account, then it's the location of the supplier of service. So if it is a bank, then the bank's place. Advertisement services to government. Government gives contracts where advertisements can be released across the country in several publications. So there what we are told is that each state where the advertisement is released, and it will have to be a portion, either it will be provided in the contract itself or otherwise some reasonable basis, it will have to be apportioned. Now I come to 5 rules which are different. The 5 rules which are different. Earlier what we saw, these rules, they are standard. They are standard applicable whether it is B2B or B2C. Now we come to 5 rules where a distinction is made between B2B and B2C. The first rule is relating to training and performance appraisal. Now here, if the service is provided to a person who is registered, so that means B2B, in that case the location of the recipient of the service will be the place of supply. The reason being, it will be transferred. And the example that we will always discussing was holding of a program, a training program in Goa. And the question which was continuously coming up was that if a training program is held in Goa, and say a person who's located in Mumbai, so say I have, or my office has organized the program in Goa, who should get the revenue? Should Goa government get the revenue, or should Maharashtra get the revenue, or should some other state get the revenue? And this was the issue which is addressed through this. What we are told is that if it is to a registered person, so say I'm the registered person, my office is in Mumbai, then though the training program is held in Goa, it will be regarded as a location, will be regarded as my location. And depending on what is, from where the service is provided, which would be in this case Goa, it will become an IGST transaction. When it becomes IGST transaction, I will in turn be able to claim credit. So then depending on what is my output, whether it's C plus S or I will be able to pass on that credit. In case that is not available, that means if it is B2C, then it is place where the training program is held, the place of performance. I come to this organization now. We earlier saw admission to any of such events is where the event is held. But when we come to organization, when there is organization of an event, then if the event is being organized for, I think AC is gone up. No, I'm okay. I guess for some time. Is it becoming too heavy for you all? Because I thought first I'll go through this and then we'll take some examples. So for organization, when the organization of an event is being done, you now need to go back to the B2B and B2C distinction. If it is B2B, where the person is registered. If it is B2C, then wherever the program is held. So for organization and admission, a distinction is being made. When you come to, again, transportation service, again here, there were lots of issues which were coming up, that for transportation, it will move from one place to another, and this will be utilized by businesses, so there will be need to have this B2B and B2C distinction. So here, again, similarly, wherever it is B2B, it is where the registered person's location is, the one which is using that. And in all other cases, like in case of transportation, the place where the goods are handed over for transportation. It could be courier, it could be anything. Then passenger transportation, again, the same distinction, B2B, B2C. For B2C, where you embark for a journey. Now, when this came up, the question that arose was, fine, when I embark on a journey, so when I've taken a specific ticket from, say, travel from Mumbai to Delhi, I know from where I'm traveling. So I'll embark in Mumbai. But say, these airlines give you coupons. In between, they have these schemes where you can buy 6 coupons or 8 coupons. Now, you will travel at a later date. So today, you don't know what is happening. So in that case, at the time when you purchase, whatever is your address as per record of that airline, so effectively, you will still get your credit for taxes, because then wherever you are located, so you will get the credit, though you don't know today where you will travel. Otherwise, supplier location. And similarly for insurance. Again, B2B and B2C. B2B, the registered recipient's address. And in case that is not available, or if it is B2C, the recipient location on record of the supplier. Now, address on record is becoming a very critical thing. Invariably, they ask address on record. So for us, it's very important to tell our clients, all our clients, that please update your records, because many of them may not have this address, and several places you will have to go by address on record. So they need to start collecting that address and with some proof of that address. Then we come to the export and import of services. Earlier we looked at import and export of goods, very simple, going out of country and coming inside the country. But when you look at services, we have these rules. It will be export, where the person, supplier is in India, the recipient of that service is outside India, and the place of supply is also outside India. Then it is export, and then the last 2 rules will apply, which are currently also applicable. Similarly, for import, if the supplier is located outside India, now I'm talking about import, so it's coming into India. So recipient is in India, and the place of supply is also in India, and we'll see some quick examples of this. So this is a situation. This is about a training program. Say A Limited is a company, and it sponsors its employee for a program in Amsterdam. The program is being held in Amsterdam. The question is, what is the place of supply? Would you like me to go back to the training program? Okay, training program. Training program, the place of supply is the registered person location or place of performance. Now in this example, the registered person is in India, it's A Limited. So the program is being held in Amsterdam. So program is being held outside India. The supplier of service, the person who's holding the program, is also outside India, but the place of supply of service is in India. So it will become import. Now let's flip it a little and say, instead of the person being sponsored, he says, I will myself go. I don't want company to sponsor, but I will go. Now he's an employee, he's not a registered person. If he is not a registered person, as we saw here, there is a distinction between B2B and others. So can we just go back? Every time you'll have to keep doing this. So it is registered person. If it is to registered person, if it is not, it's the place of performance. So in this example now, what happens is the place of performance is outside India. So there is no obligation to pay tax in India. So the distinction, B2B and B2C. Take another example. Now this is a situation where there is an artist who's in India who travels to UK for surgery, wants to get plastic surgery done. The plastic surgeon has given a package. So based on that package, it includes stay in the hospital, medicines, etc., whatever. Now, where is would it constitute import or not? It is B2B. Okay, let me just go back. Sorry. In relation to restaurant, catering, beauty treatment, health service, it also includes plastic surgery, which I have not included, where performed. So the location is where it is performed. Now, since it is performed outside India, though the person who's making the payment is in India, there's no obligation to pay any tax in India because the two are outside India. And we also simultaneously should look at these rules, export and import. So in import, if the place of supply is India, then only it becomes import. Otherwise, it doesn't become import. So in this case, the place of supply is outside India, and since it is outside, it does not become import. When we look at domestic services, I'm just taking a few examples. Here you have, say, there is a person who owns a restaurant chain, is located in Faridabad, and there are 3 restaurants, one in Delhi, one in Surat, and one in Pune. And there is a businessman, an employee of a business A, who is fan of this restaurant chain. So whenever he is traveling, he uses this restaurant chain. So when he goes to Delhi, he'll use this. What is the place of supply? Now let's go back to the restaurant services. Restaurant services were performed. There's no distinction for B2B, B2C. So it is where performed. Where performed meaning in restaurant case, it is where the restaurant is located. So therefore, the place of provision of service is the concerned location. So whether it's Delhi, Surat, Pune. The service provider, the supplier of service, because we have to look at 2. From where it is provided and where it is provided. Where is the place of supply and or at which location, and who provides is the location of the supplier. Here the location of supplier is Delhi, Surat, Pune in each case, and the place of supply is also Delhi, Surat, Pune. So in each case there will be a local transaction, intrastate transaction, it will be, and what will tax that will be charged with C plus S. Now where is this businessman located is irrelevant. Whether it's Mumbai or anywhere else, it's irrelevant. It is clearly that location. Now let's add one more feature to this. That this business continuously needs linen. So they have a linen supplier who's located in Maharashtra. So the arrangement is the bill will always go to Faridabad. That's a head office. So the bill will always go to Faridabad, but so far as Surat and Pune is concerned, the delivery will happen in Surat, the concerned restaurants. For Delhi, the delivery will first go to Faridabad, and from Faridabad, it will go to Delhi. Now we have to determine what is the place of supply. Now this is goods. Earlier we were looking at service. When we look at goods, what we saw earlier, what we have to see is, this is bill to ship to transaction. So far as Surat and Pune is concerned, bill to ship to. Now in bill to ship to, what we saw earlier is, the person to whom you are billing, that is the person who's deemed to have received the supply. So though actually it has gone to Surat and Pune, you have to assume or deem that the goods have gone to Faridabad. So therefore, first there will be an IGST. Now from the second leg of that will be Faridabad to Surat and Pune. So it's in different state. So there will be IGST, internal transaction. Similarly, It has gone to Faridabad. Faridabad is transferring to Delhi. Again, it will be an interstate transaction. Let's have another feature. They have some cleaning service provider. Now say this cleaning service provider is located in Chandigarh. He does the normal cleaning and maintenance. He is located in Chandigarh and he has contracted directly with each of the restaurants. So he invoices each of the restaurants and obviously supplies services to each of the restaurants. In this case, what is the place of supply? Now for cleaning services, the general rule will apply. It's not a specific rule. So the general rule will apply. The general rule is location of the registered person. Location of the registered person is Delhi, Surat, Pune. So each of the transaction will accordingly be from Chandigarh. If he is providing from Chandigarh, then it is an interstate transaction. But let us assume what he does is, instead of moving people from Chandigarh, he has opened offices, small offices in each of the places. So he has an office in Delhi, Surat, Pune. In that case, it will become a local transaction. So what will happen is, and this is again under consideration, there will be Chandigarh, and if there are 3 sub-offices, there are transaction of supplies between Chandigarh and the sub-offices. Now, the valuation is a big challenge, but it will be treated as if they have supplied service. Part of service they may procure locally and then provide service here. So partly interstate, partly intrastate. Now this is about the entertainment. So say there is an organizer who's located at Mumbai, and he announces, or he is holding a mega event, a Diwali Gala night in Indore. Now for holding that program, he needs an event manager. So he has contracted an event manager who's located in Indore only. Now that Indore event manager, in turn, gets a band which is from Africa. So he gets an African band, and then he also contracts 2 artists to come, one from Mumbai and one from West Bengal, to come and perform at that event. And what this organizer is doing is, he's selling tickets for this event. Now those tickets he's selling online, offline, so physically as well as online. Now we have to determine the taxation, the place of supply, and therefore whether it's an interstate or intrastate, I will apply or C plus S will apply. So we'll have to start breaking it down. Here, because there are too many this, I have just put it together for easy understanding. First of all is the event organizer. Now what is he selling? He's selling tickets which entitle you to admission to that event. Now whenever there is an admission of the event, admission to an event, the place of supply is where the event is being held. So place of supply is Indore in this case. Now the person who's supplying that service from, he is the person who is located in Mumbai. That is his registered office. So he is in Mumbai. So it becomes an interstate transaction. Now he has in turn contracted an event manager. Now the event manager will do the organization. He'll manage the whole event. In that case, for event management, as we saw organization, there is a distinction between B2B and B2C. Here, this X, the Z to whom he is providing service, is a business and is registered. So therefore, the place of supply will become Mumbai. Place of supply will become Mumbai. Now, there is this African band who's coming from Africa, but the event is being held in Mumbai, Indore. So the performance, place where they are performing is in Indore. So the place of supply is Indore. So by reverse charge mechanism, the event manager will have to pay tax. Then you have these artists. One is in Mumbai, one is in West Bengal. So they are registered at that place, but they are now performing in Indore. So the place of supply becomes Indore. So therefore, it becomes IGST. Now when you see this transaction, you'll find that because of this rule, though it seems complex, the input tax credit will move through. It will move through because most of it is I. And because of I, it will move from one place to another. It will not get stuck. Though there can be situations where it will get stuck. You're saying something? Yeah.
Just one question, that will IGST of Indore be adjustable against my output IGST of Bombay?
Yes. Yeah. I is fungible. S is not fungible. C, we don't have clear answer. Whether C is fungible or not, today we don't have clear answer, though most of the officers are of the view that C is also not fungible. So C of one state cannot be used against C of another state. S clearly no, because S is state specific. So the representations being made and being explained is that C is all going to central government. Whether you get it in one state or another, how does it matter? It should be fungible. But today there is question mark. But so far as I is concerned, very clear, it's entirely fungible. So wherever you pay I, in fact, that's the whole mechanism of transferring credit from one place to another, transferring taxes from one place to another. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So let's come to the food. Very food. Restaurant catering. Catering is where performed. So the food that is served will be local, indoor. Sorry? Depending on who the caterer is. If the caterer is from Indore, yes, MP to MP. Otherwise, no. From to the place where it is provided. Hotel stay, again, hotel is immovable property, local. So that is where, in case of hotels, it's becoming a big problem because the tax is getting stuck because of CNS. That so you'll be charged more or less. In fact, whenever we go to meet these officers, the first question they ask is, what is the implication that you're talking about? If you say here the tax will be stuck, how much tax will be stuck? वो पहले समझाओ. Then let me take this banking. Again, banking is becoming a huge problem. So what happens is, say the bank has a HO in Gujarat. So it's a HO, Gujarat-based bank. Now it has a customer because they have a branch in Bihar. So there is a person who has an account with Bihar branch. But currently he is posted in Maharashtra. So what he does is, and in banking, it's anywhere banking. So what he does is he uses Maharashtra bank, the bank branch located in Maharashtra. So in banking terminology, what they say is the home branch, which is the original branch. The service branch is Maharashtra branch. Now this person goes to Manali, and there he uses ATM. He withdraws money. It's his fourth withdrawal or third withdrawal, so there is a charge. In ATM, after I think 2 or 3 withdrawals, there is a charge. So he is being charged tax. Now that ATM machine in Manali should be able to determine what tax should be charged to you, whether it should be IGST or C+S. Now if you see ATM is located it's an immovable property, it's located there. Now it's yet a banking service. So for banking service, as we saw, if it is linked to an account, the location where the person has his account, his address is the Bihar branch. So therefore, it should become an IGST transaction. Now he goes to Gujarat and he takes a DD. He needs a DD, so he is in Gujarat. He goes to his own bank and says, I need a DD. They give him a DD and they charge him some charges. The question again is whether it's a interstate or intrastate transaction. Now here again, it's linked to his account because money will be charged to his account. He is in Bihar because that's a place where he has his account. So therefore, again, it will become an interstate transaction. But for the banks, this is becoming a big problem because what they're saying is now when you go to withdraw money from ATM, the moment the ATM has to charge you something, they will have to communicate back to their data system and find out whether you are a local customer or a non-local customer. It could be in Himachal, a local person can also come to withdraw. So they will have to talk and find out where is your account and whether they should charge I or C&S. And every time, now when you go to take a DD in the bank, that time, that cashier will also need to determine whether what is the tax that they should charge you. So a lot of representations are being made, but several challenges. It's a very complex subject. What I've tried to do is try to take you through the provisions, explain what the provisions are, and I've taken some very simple examples just to bring home the concept. Because it's a concept is little new for us. We'll have to get used to that concept. We can now have questions. Thank you.
We can have some questions from the floor first. Anyone? Yeah. We'll take a mic.
Mic.
Hello. Is a transaction in foreign currency goods or it's money? Because foreign currency is not Indian currency.
You're right. It's not Indian currency. And for that, perhaps we will have separate provisions. Because Forex transactions earlier was also a challenge, continues to be a challenge. So we will have some separate provisions for dealing with Forex. But you're right, it's goods.
Hi, ma'am. Thank you for the presentation. It was amazing. I have one question. I belong to the shipping sector, and one of the challenges which we are trying to understand is if I have a customer who is in Delhi, I'm carrying a good from, say, Jamnagar, and I'm based out of Bombay, and I'm delivering goods at Haldia. Now, which kind of transaction will this attract?
So what you're saying is your office is in Delhi.
My office is in Bombay.
Your office is in Bombay.
I have a customer in Delhi.
So what you're saying is the provider, the person who's supplying the service has a registered office in Mumbai.
Correct.
Then your customer is?
Is in Delhi.
Customer is in Delhi, yeah.
And the goods are being transported from, say, Jamnagar to Haldia.
Okay. So in case of transportation, what you are saying is this is transportation service, right? In case of transportation service, the distinction has to be made between B2B and B2C. Transportation service, a distinction will have to be made between B2B and B2C. So the service that you are providing to your customer who is located in Delhi, he has the registered address of Delhi. So therefore, and you are located in Mumbai. Now where the goods are moving from is irrelevant. It's the location of your recipient of service.
Madam, you said that IGST is fungible. So my question is, how is that practically how is that practically done? Because registration I have to take state-wise, but IGST, I mean, I don't know what would be the mechanism for that.
So what happens is, let's say, it's IGST is replacement of CST. Think about it that way, right? So I'm providing service to a person in Ahmedabad. I will charge IGST. And I will pay also as IGST in Mumbai. Because I am located in Mumbai. The recipient of service is located in Ahmedabad, which is in Gujarat. So I will charge IGST. Now that recipient has received I as input service, because he has paid me. So he has input service of I. On the output side, let us assume that he has provided local service. So it's intrastate service. He has charged CGST and SGST, recovered from the customer, CGST and IGST. Now when he makes payment, what he will do is, he'll take his CGST, he'll take SGST and adjust IGST against that. So if we were to take numbers, when I supplied service, say I charge 100 rupees for the service and 20 rupees I charged by way of IGST. Now my customer has in turn, using this service, provided output service and he has charged 200 rupees to local customer. Local customer in Gujarat. Now when he is 200, and let us assume the rate is 10% and 10%. So he has to pay CGST of 20 and SGST of 20. You with me? Yeah. Now, when he works out his output tax, he has C of 20, S of 20 on the output side. Input side, he has I of 20. So what he will do is, against his CGST, because there is an order, I, C, and S. So against C, he will adjust this 20. So also C, net payable, 0. Net payable, 0. Output 20, input 20 of IGST, net payable 0, and he'll pay only SGST of 20. Clear? So it can move on and on. It can be I, then from I to I to I, and it can ultimately reach the customer, ultimate consumer. Same way it works for goods also. Goods and services, same.
Now, in case of that training example, where the training is happening in Amsterdam, if the company and the employee, they were to split the cost, meaning the sponsor says, I will match if we, split the cost, then how would it work?
Yeah. Now, this is, today we don't have the rules for determining this, but if we were to really apply common sense principle, what will happen is it will be split 50. To the extent the employer has paid, because that's what will go out of his pocket, it will be import. To the extent it is paid by the employee, no implication.
Ma'am, in the last example, so the address that would be considered would be permanent address or correspondence address?
It is account address. Now, account address is where a home branch is, but that's a challenge. What banks are saying is because we have 3 addresses. Generally, they are saying we have 3 addresses. Plus, banks will also have your address where you say you just correspondence address, temporary address. You may have a demat account. You may have a credit card with the same bank. All the addresses will be different. So what they are saying is, what is this account that we have to refer to? Now, one way of looking at it is the account to which the service relates. So if that amount which is charged is going to be debited to your savings account or current account, whichever account it is, that account's address is to be taken. So for credit card, whatever are the charges, credit card account. If it is demat account. But then the banks are saying is that look at the burden. How will we change our systems in next 3 months to capture all of this? It's going to be impossible. And the whole system across the country will slow down, because what one of the banks told us was that in a day, there are 1,25,00,000 ATM transactions in a day. Now just imagine if these are the transactions, and for every transaction, the system, that machine has to talk, and across the country this is happening, what will happen? Overall, we just don't have that type of bandwidth. So government has also understood, the GST network also understood, said we'll certainly look at this, which is the way in which this can be simplified, because we can't ask you to continuously talk to your system.
Ma'am, in the example which he asked, if I have registration in all the states, so that IGST, how will I bifurcate?
Whichever state you have, it doesn't matter. In fact, you can even transfer. There is an input service distributor model, so you can even transfer from one state to another through input service distribution model.
ISD would be centralized or decentralized? Like if I want one ISD registration for all, like the whole country.
So though technically what will happen is, when you take registration in a state, effectively you will have one number, but when you will upload your returns and other data, you will upload C, S, and I separately.
Right.
So I, in a sense, technically will be individual state-wise, but it can move across. You can use it anywhere.
Okay.
It's not state specific.
Okay. And if I have vertical registrations within the state, so that
same there also. Between verticals also you'll be able to use.
But CGST, SNC, it would not be transferable. Only IGST would be transferable.
IGST only will be transferable.
Okay.
On C, at the moment, there is no clarity.
Okay.
It could later on, maybe we don't know. Once the studies are done and we know what is likely to be the impact, we'll know the answer. But S clearly no. Because S is state specific, the state wants that revenue and it will remain with the states. One very good thing is each of the states understand that this is a consumption-based model, it's a destination model, and therefore the taxes must move to another state. So we can't have provisions by which the tax is stuck in the state. It will move. So one of the situations which we were discussing was for the shipping lines and the shipping line agents. What happens is when the goods arrive in India, they come in containers, correct? They come in containers. Now the containers are cleared and the containers move to the local destination, and then the deliveries are made at different places. They remain at some place, they pick up goods and they come back. And then again they move out with the export cargo. Now today the provision is that you don't pay any tax on these containers. You pay tax on the goods. For the containers, there is an exemption. So you don't pay tax. Now in the new scenario, on the containers also you'll have to pay tax because it will be regarded as an IGST transaction and you may have to pay IGST. Then the question that arises is, at the time of import I pay IGST, first there will be a big issue about valuation and so on and so forth because these containers are used and reused and so on. But let's assume I pay IGST. Now that container keeps moving from one place to another. It is goods. The place of supply is where it is delivered. So I first send it to a customer, say from Maharashtra it starts. So it first goes to a customer in Gujarat. It's still there for some time. Thereafter it goes to Rajasthan. Then it goes to Delhi. Then it goes up to Bihar. It comes back. So which is the place? How will I, divide? And there is no separate charge for container per se. It's only where the goods are loaded inside and they're taken out. So it's just bringing the import cargo and taking the export cargo. There's no separate charge for it. Now, when there is no separate charge, there is a provision deemed to be supplied. So 0, where there is no consideration, you have to attribute some consideration. What consideration will you attribute? So, when you start looking at it in detail, you'll find that there are several challenges which are coming up, and the officers are very happy to look at the issues and the challenges that you bring to them. Because what they are saying is, we are trying our best to address every situation to the extent we can address, because we are still in the stage of drafting rules. The rules are still being sort of worked on, though we had the first draft. The act is still to be worked on because there are several suggestions which have come and they are looking at that. And what has happened is, over a period of time, different groups have worked on it. So something comes in, thereafter something else comes in. Now that may be contradicting something which was put in earlier. So naturally that process is going on. So it's for us today to represent, because this is the best time. Once it comes in, the amendments are going to be extremely, extremely difficult because it will have to go through the GST Council. GST Council, we have to have the buy-in from the state governments. Now we don't have to deal with individual states, right? Once GST comes in, effectively we'll have to deal with only one body, GST Council. And GST Council has representation from states and center. So convincing center just doesn't work. Convincing a state just doesn't work. Therefore, best that identify as many issues as one can and take it to the concerned officers today. They are willing to look at it, willing to address it. And also, one important point is, don't go with the problems, go with the solutions. What do you think will work such that the credit will not be, the tax will not be blocked, will not be stuck. You will get the credit and it will move to the destination.
Ma'am, If I am a business entity based in Delhi, and if I am importing, if I am a business entity based in Delhi, and I am importing goods, and the port of importation is Bombay. So what will be the place of supply? Do I need to get registered in Bombay to pay IGST? And further, as we seen that IGST will be partly transferred to the destination state. So what will be the destination state in this case?
Now in Mumbai, will you hold the goods and your in the bill of lading, what will be the address?
It will be Delhi. So Bombay is just the port of importation.
Then straight it will move to Delhi. So Mumbai will get no money. You'll pay IGST. From Delhi itself, you'll pay IGST.
So in Delhi, I have to file the return. One more thing, that IST concept is only for the services, not for the goods. So for the central, for the, you can say HO goods, will the credit gets blocked for the inputs and capital goods?
Yes. Yes. Currently, there is no provision for transfer of input tax. Input services, it is there, but goods is not there.
But in Senvet credit, it's allowed, like the Rule 7A, which allows it.
Correct. But so, therefore, see, either you plan your affairs in such a way that you don't get blocked there, or alternatively, make representation today, see if the officers find some substance in that argument, and they find that there is a mechanism by which it can be transferred.
Thank you.
Ma'am, one more question. Like big organizations which are registered in all the states. So if they are availing some common services and payment is being made from some shared services, so how do the transaction, like everywhere it would be CGST, SGST? Or?
We'll have to look at the rule for that particular supply of service. Okay. But as you saw, the recipient is the one who makes the payment.
Yeah.
So that's the registered address which will be relevant. But you'll have to see the concerned rule, because different services will have different rules.
Right.
Just wait for the mic to
Hello, I'm from an FMCG company. So it's the biggest expense for us is in advertising. So how do you place this place of service there? So I have a advertising agency, a broadcast, and I take maximum expenses from HO to HO. So that will be CGST plus.
See, for advertising, there is no special rule. It's a general rule. Correct. So general rule is where the registered business is located.
So a lot of credit will be held at HO. So
yes.
Now that will be done through
ISD.
ISD. Now ISD will be based on the respective
proportion.
plans.
Proportion.
But what will be the proportion? How it will be distributed?
Proportion as of now would be the
right now it's assessable value or a turnover.
Value for each of the businesses. But there again, people are requesting for different proxies. One is turnover, but people are requesting that look at other proxies also. Just don't go by turnover. So have a combination of one or two other items also, proxies.
But that's still not that's not a clarity.
As of now, no.
Okay.
Representation.
Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. Like professionals, we all have many offices in various states. So there, do we, right now, to suppose we are managing with centralized registration and whatever input services are there, we are getting setups and all. So
from where you provide service, you have to register. So maybe we'll have to take more than one registration.
Continuing that consulting example itself, let us say we have branches across the country and we provide, let's say, an audit service wherein there are some work happening from Bombay, some work happening from Delhi, and we want to go into the tiebreaker test, which you just explained. What would determine that tiebreaker test? How would we actually decide which would be the more closest establishment connected with the supply? So there will be some work done from Bombay, some done from there. So how are we going to look at it?
Can we consider signing as the most closest? That's the one where you take the maximum responsibility. then you will have to prove which is most closely connected. It's possible. You might say that the entire work is done by there, and the one person who is reviewed is located elsewhere, which is possible. But by and large, you know, I mean, it's, of course, we will have to look at individual facts. So there will be question marks, and there's no common answer. It's not for everybody that a common answer will apply. In fact, for us only the other day, the commissioner was asking us that how will you do for your own case? You have offices across, and you have people who keep moving from one place to another. So we said, wherever we contract for, if I have contracted, if Mumbai has taken the assignment, Mumbai is the closest. So we'll apply Mumbai.
Yeah, ma'am, for sale in the course of import, today when I transfer the goods while in import to a party in other state, I would be raising interstate invoice on them, and they would also be paying IGST. So would they pay double IGST?
You know, there is actually this issue, the doubt has arisen because of the language in IGST law, correct? The language is anything in any supply in the course of import shall be regarded as deemed IGST transaction, interstate supply. Now, when does the import come to an end? Import comes to an end when the goods are cleared from customs. Till that time, there cannot be any tax, local tax. So it can be only after clearance. Otherwise, there will be double taxation, triple taxation. If there are twice or thrice transfers, who gets credit? Nobody can get credit. If we go by that assumption, that if it is transfer while the goods are on high seas, if there is first transfer, second transfer, each time nobody can get credit. So therefore, the tax will start, or IGST will apply when you clear from customs. Till that time, it cannot apply. That appropriate language will come or appropriate clarification will come. And that's an international practice. It's not something which is unique to us.
So kind of an importer who transfers the invoice to a customer outside state may not have to charge IGST on, because till that time the goods have not cleared the import duty.
Exactly. Till it is not cleared, no.
Ma'am, this place of supply of service is related to services specific. So classification of services will be a challenge?
Classification of service is already today also there, and in fact in the return, in the invoice that you raise, you will have to give service account code, which is your classification, current. In the return you have to do it. We've been convincing them that why do you need this? For goods HSN and for services service accounting code. So we have been telling them that how does it really matter? My customer may classify it under A chapter and I classify under B. What difference so long as you have received tax and I'm claiming the same, and you're going to have the whole system. Today they want this data for their statistical analysis. So they are saying we need this data, at least initially we need, and we also looked at other countries. So what they do is they give industry code. So for you there is an industry code, and if you belong to a industry, say cement industry, then you have a code. You use that code. Thereafter, every item that you buy or sell, or every service that you provide, you don't classify individually. But here they are very keen that they should have this data. Deemed sales. Deemed exports, sorry. Now agent is to be regarded as a supplier. So everything changes. You are a supplier. The agent who handles goods is a supplier, no? The new regime. He will be charging services on that. He is now dealing with goods. He is supplier of goods. So therefore the goods ka provisions will apply. This, several commission agents, Govind Bhai will know, across the country, because they are saying now we are suppliers. Now, so far they were dealing with only that commission. It's come to me and it's gone out. Now it's not like that. It will come to them. That is a supply from the principal. When they in turn deliver, it's further supply by them. That's separate. That's separate. It's like you will have to, but because you are dealing with the goods and you are an agent for goods, a supplier includes agent.
Madam, how to determine the place of supply for goods and services in case of the job worker, where the principal manufacturer delivers the goods at a job worker or services, and in turn they want to claim the ITC under GST?
Correct. Now there an option is given. If the job worker wishes to register himself, then that's the place, his registered place. If he does not wish to register, then the principal has to register at the place of the job worker as an additional place of business.
Okay.
Yes. So therefore that becomes registered place either for the job worker or the principal. And then the transaction will happen. So that's where delivery will happen.
But in this case, who will file the return for the GST,
Principal.
whether job worker or principal?
If job worker has opted for registration, he will file. Otherwise, the principal will file.
For the goods or services, because for the job work, job worker will charge the service tax, correct? Under GST for the supply of services.
See, commercial transaction and this will be different.
Okay.
Because under this law, it will be regarded as supply. So either job worker has not opted for registration. In that case, he will charge for job work charges.
Correct.
Or he has opted for registration. Now, so far as job worker is concerned, there are exceptions. Exceptions have been made. Even in where we saw that without consideration, job worker is out. So job worker is not even supplying.
Correct.
So job worker is really out. It's a principal who will take care of everything.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
One last question.
Wherever you are delivering the goods. Different states.
Now I have a set off of 100 rupees which is in my account. So can I transfer it in the GST? What will be the scenario?
What is that credit for?
Credit for FMGC company, they have a set off, which VAT set off.
Service tax or VAT?
VAT.
VAT. Is it shown in your return, VAT return?
Yes, yes.
Then you'll get.
So that will be transferred to the...
That will be transitioned. The transition provisions are there. Please look at the transition provisions because there are several situations where the credit is being lost. So the other day we
But
had
there
one...
was one clause, that they will compensate for first 5 years.
The
So
center will compensate state.
What was that exactly? What is the meaning of that?
If the state incurs loss, if their revenue, and if you, what Maharashtra government has done back of the envelope calculation, they are going to lose about what CM mentioned, some 25,000 crores straight. Back of the envelope calculation, CST loss, octroi loss, cascading loss. In fact, you can't imagine how much is the cascading. On excise duty, they are getting VAT today. In GST scenario, there is no cascading. That cascading itself is pretty huge. So with all of that, their loss is some 25,000 crore straight. And then others, one doesn't know what will happen because some of the taxes which they were getting today may move somewhere else, some will come here, credits will happen. So there are states who will lose. And when they lose, the central government will compensate.
But same thing happened at CST. They were going to compensate from 3 to 2, but that did not happen.
No, that's a different question. But the tax rate itself may come down. You know, today, most of the states have 12.5, 13, they've gone up to 15. And even the lower rate has gone up to 6. So the difference itself will be huge on that count itself.
The burden would come on the tax-paying public?
Overall, no.
Just be seated for 5 more minutes, please. Thank you, Bhavanaben. I think she patiently answered each and every queries. And I'm quite sure as we start thinking more and more, there will be more and more queries. And each one of us should have on our table, I would say, with the dashboard, the various B2B, B2C, and specified general, because that is it's going to be too complex, I think. With this first, may I request Sunil to do the honors, please.
Before I present a well-deserved vote of thanks, a couple of announcements. The next couple of lecture meetings which the BCS has planned are as under. We have a lecture meeting on transfer pricing, recent developments and controversies by CA Hitesh Gajaria. This is on Friday, 11th of November 2016. Thereafter, we have an expert chat session wherein we have CA Rashmin Sanghvi along with a chat with CA Sushil Zakhani on the topic of is BEPS an answer to tax planning. This will be on 19th of October 2016. Both of these programs will be at the BCS auditorium. We also have quite a few paid programs. One is a seminar on capital management in banks, which is on the 7th of October. A mentoring miracle batch, which is on the 14th of October. And a 17th intensive study course on DTAA, which will start on the 3rd of December and go all the way up to 28th of January. This year we are celebrating the Golden Jubilee RRC. This is at Jaipur and this is from 19th of January to the 22nd of January. The details of all these programs are available in the BCS newsletter, which you must have already received. Over and above these programs, we have done a 2-day joint workshop with the Ahmedabad Chartered Accountants Association on the 21st and the 22nd of October. This is open only for 30 members from the local level because there are participants from the Ahmedabad Association as well. So I would request you all to go through the newsletter and subscribe to the programs as felt appropriate. Coming to the very pleasant task of performing the vote of thanks. Friends, when we thought about GST and some acclimatization meetings on GST like this, the first thing which came to our mind was a place of supply. And when we talked about place of supply, we had no other speaker in our thought other than Bhavna Ben. The way she has taken the topic, I can tell you it has made it very, very simple. She has first explained the provisions of the law, and thereafter she has taken some case studies. And more importantly, she has patiently answered each and every question which has been raised from the floor. Thank you, Bhavna Ben, for readily accepting our invitation. As always, we know we can always bank upon you for anything which we want. And thank you for obliging us and taking time out of your busy schedule. Thank you once again.